Hi, everyone. Just waiting for people to join on the hour. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just give it a few minutes. We're just going to get started any minute. So, hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this webinar today. As you can see, we may not know, but I am actually in HubSpot's EMEA HQ in Dublin. And so today we're going to be talking about handling objections when moving from Salesforce to HubSpot. We have lots of other material on Salesforce and HubSpot, by the way. So we've previously done webinars on why move from Salesforce to HubSpot, and actually detail where we had sales engineers and some of our expert technical guys talking about actually how that migration works. But today we're really going to focus on the objection handling. A little bit about myself. I'm Adam Lewis. I'm co-founder of BBD Boom. We're a HubSpot elite partner. We are 100% HubSpot, and we've worked with over 300 companies who've moved to HubSpot. So let's get going. So really, the scenario we're probably familiar with is there's a lot of excitement about moving to HubSpot. There'll be people within the business that are familiar with HubSpot that think it's a really good idea and are really driving forward the move to HubSpot for all the reasons that we'll talk about later. And there's a lot of excitement. But of course, then we will inevitably, within most organizations, come across people who either just outright object to moving away from their system, or just have a lot of good questions that they just need to be reassured about. So that's what I want to take everybody through today, really, in terms of what those typical objections, questions, concerns are about making such a move. And they really fall into 4 categories. So the feature set, is the feature set of HubSpot really comparable with Salesforce? If we can move through that, then there might be some questions about what does that implementation look like? Do we really want to do that implementation? Is it difficult? Is it complex? Is it long? The cost, what's the cost of Salesforce versus HubSpot? Which is cheaper? Do we want to consider the actual costs of doing this? And then the adoption piece, how easy is it to use HubSpot versus Salesforce? And so those are all, from our experience of working with hundreds of customers, the typical areas that you may find you have to deal with and answer questions around. So let's talk about features. So one of the objections that we hear is, but HubSpot is for small businesses. And that's so old, I think, really, because that used to be the case years and years ago. HubSpot built its reputation, built its brand from working with smaller businesses and working up the food chain, whereas Salesforce has, historically been very enterprise-led and working its way down the market. And this is G2, Crowd, Grid, and you can see that there's only really 2 leaders in the CRM market, and that's HubSpot and Salesforce. HubSpot is a leader in CRM for businesses of all sizes. And I think that is probably one of the first misconceptions that people discuss around HubSpot. It's not really relevant for bigger or more complex organizations. And as we'll find out, that is just not true. So one of the more specific objections that we hear is this idea that Salesforce has a more customizable user interface for the reps and the people that are living inside it day in, day out. And I'm going to take you through some examples of where, HubSpot is just meeting that now. And I think with HubSpot Sales Enterprise upgrade in 2020, there was just a massive, and subsequently there's just a massive uplift in the features and the customizability of HubSpot. So clearly we can customize the CRM view. So what people see in their day-to-day workspace by teams, by function, and that makes the day-to-day interactions with people really, really useful, relevant. We can customize CRM cards. On the right-hand side, we can build out cards that shortcut you to information that you want to see around that record, be it a company, deal, or contact. And actually, we can build with integrations, we can have custom data being pulled into that. So an example of something that we did recently was we brought through information from a database of broadband speeds, because this was a telecoms company, and the salespeople needed to know instantly what was the broadband speed of that contact's address. And we were able to pull that into the CRM card right there. So that is highly customizable. Something that's literally come out in the last few months is now the ability to customize the central part of a CRM record. And we have this ability to look at the overview, the activities, and then customize certain modules that you want to see. So we're able to customize the left and the right-hand side of the CRM view. And now we can customize the middle bit, which is great. Clearly for sales teams, then, having the right information around deal records is crucial. And we can now edit deal cards to specify what we see in them, whether we want certain currency, close dates, deal stages, probability. Those can all now be customized in deal cards. Let's move on to another one then. So the other one I hear is, but Salesforce has more powerful, proposal and quoting capability. Again, we've got to challenge that now, because we have the ability to do custom templates, custom themes for quotes. So we can actually design a quote template to be multiple pages long, to have whatever data we want in there pulled from the CRM and injected into that quote, and designed so the look and feel of it can be whatever we want it to be. And we can, with some pretty straightforward design and dev work, we can make that theme exactly as the client needs it. And failing that, if that isn't possible, there's so many integrations with dedicated CPQ tools like PandaDoc, which work really, really seamlessly inside the system, that have all sorts of approvals and things like that, and commenting features and stuff like that that you can build in. On the right-hand side, I want to draw you to the fact that with Ops Hub and custom coded actions, we can actually do some really sophisticated things around custom pricing. So we can code out a calculator where you might put in basic information around volumes of a product and particular product lines. And if there's then custom quoting that needs to be done off the back of that, we can use Ops Hub to generate that price and insert that into quotes. So we can build out a very complex calculator using Ops Hub to do some of that for clients that have, multiple options around and typically used to using configurators. We can replicate some of that in HubSpot. And of course, then the thing that we hear is that Salesforce has a more customizable data structure. I just don't think that is true. So since custom objects, as we're probably familiar with, that was a huge leap forward in the way that we can handle the data structure of HubSpot to replicate what's in the business and what matters to the business. I've got some use cases here of stuff that we do a lot of. If I start on the right hand side here, we've got typical use case for telecoms companies or estate agents, where they actually, the most important object for them is the property, it's the building. Okay, so if you're a telecoms company, you're selling into that building, whoever's in that building. There might be individual contacts, individual residential customers. There might also be companies in there. And then within that company, clearly there are individual contacts that might be decision makers and buyers and things like that. And then one property might actually have multiple contacts, multiple companies with contacts, and then consequently multiple objects. Well, by building a property object, they can all hang off that and all be managed, and the data structure can replicate how that business, in the case of telecoms and estate agents, actually operates. Other examples that we'll be familiar with is recruitment. So, you know, the key one there is the actual candidate. Yes, they're a contact, but they're a candidate who is being, you know, recruited or in the interview process for specific jobs. They may have a history of applying for other jobs. And then with the software clients we work with, sometimes people want a subscription object, which allows them to hang off multiple line items and multiple different types of projects off it. And of course, with custom objects, going back a few months, that would have to be something that was coded. But now with the new interface, that is, we can deploy custom objects within the standard UI of HubSpot. So that really makes the kind of usability of it much more straightforward. Slight plug here to a webinar we've got coming up, which is how to customize HubSpot to any business today. And we're going to be talking to Louise Mason from Property Alliance Group, where we're really working with her to make HubSpot become not just a kind of CRM tool, but actually a central platform for how they manage their property sales and their lettings business and their development projects. And I think what we're trying to showcase there is that now the advances that HubSpot have made allows us to really customize HubSpot for any business. Okay, so let's talk about this other objection we hear sometimes, which is that Salesforce has better reporting than HubSpot. And this is a screenshot from, for those of you that use Salesforce, you know, that's what it looks like. I don't think it looks like, it's not as good as HubSpot from a UI point of view, but we'll come on to that in a minute. And when I looked at the G2 Crowd reviews about Salesforce, this is what was said. Reviewers appreciate Sales Cloud's ability to generate and dissect reports, comma, although some noted difficulties in creating reports due to the robust feature set and user interface. You can read what you like into that. I think people are saying that Salesforce has lots of capability, but actually it's a little bit difficult and sometimes clunky to use. So let's talk about HubSpot. Well, with HubSpot, we for many months now have been able to do cross-object reporting. That's incredibly powerful. That allows us to essentially pivot company information against deal information. We can look at web activities by company. We can look at tickets by company. We can look at, you know, marketing emails against deals. We can, by putting these different reports together that have multiple objects in it, we are just opening up the power of HubSpot reporting. And so that's the kind of the data sets that you work with. But obviously, on a day-to-day level, people really care about what the visualization looks like and how easy it is to actually assess this information. And so we've got multiple data visualization options in HubSpot. We've got your standard, you know, bar charts and line charts and pie charts, but we've got, you know, just straight numbers. We've got tables, and we've actually got pivot tables now, which is incredibly powerful. So if you couldn't achieve what you wanted to do with the cross-object reporting, we can now put another layer of pivots into it, and that will display inside HubSpot. Very, very powerful. And if that wasn't enough, we have data sets, which just obviously is an enterprise feature, which kind of just blows my mind. I think for businesses that really are very data sort of sophisticated and have data analysts and the finance team that are very familiar with functions and all this sort of stuff, we have data sets. I mean, the possibilities there are limitless. And a really, really nice thing that's just come out recently is the customer journey analytics. So this is where you've now got the ability to visualize data in a totally different way. For those people that are familiar with Google Analytics, you know, you're able to look at the journey that people go through in interacting with different parts of your site. So they might start on the home page, and then they go to the pricing page, and then they might convert or they might drop off. It's a very similar model here. And it allows us to really understand at a very granular level what is happening. In this case, where we're looking at sales emails sent, sales emails open through to clicks. So we can kind of segment everything and visualize it and help understand how to improve things. So this is a brand new feature, customer journey analytics, and I think people are going to get really excited about this. Now, obviously within the sales process, it's very important that we understand forecasts. And this is something that's literally published in the last month by Zapier when they were doing a review of Salesforce and HubSpot. And apparently what you can do with Salesforce is you can assess current leads, and you can their anticipated close date, the stage of the funnel they're in, and the amount that you plan on closing on, and the probability of closing. Wow. Guess what? We can actually do that in HubSpot as well. And again, I think the forecasting tools from HubSpot, to be fair, have probably in the last 9 to 12 months have really gone up a level, and they are just fantastic now. So we have the forecasting tool, which can be broken down by teams, by individuals, and we can look at different stages of the sales pipeline and how that forecast is playing out. We've then got the manual forecast, which I know that some of our customers with Salesforce put a lot of weight on. It's the idea that actually we're going to ask the sales rep to sort of put their gut numbers in. So we can do that, and we can obviously compare the two. We can compare what's the weighted pipeline telling us, what's the forecast telling us, and what's the manual forecast telling us. And obviously I was being slightly sarcastic about Zapier because we can have a weighted pipeline. And you can control obviously the weightings within each stage of the pipeline. We can change which parts of the pipeline we are going to use for that. And then the other thing then is HubSpot has a degree of AI at play here, which is the probability to close property. So the probability to close property is really looking at all of the historic data around what deals close and trying to piece together the signals that indicate deals that are most likely to close based on prior behaviors of sales reps and customers. I know, for example, that HubSpot will say that one of the biggest indicators of probability to close is where prospects book meetings in and book multiple meetings in. That shows a real proactive action from them. And that might be a signal that says this deal is, looking interesting in terms of closing. So people think that Salesforce has better forecasting. I would encourage anybody to look at these features in detail and see if they meet the needs of the business. So implementation, if we're going to move from any system to HubSpot, the migration implementation process, is something that's got to be, factored in. It's not just something that's going to happen overnight. It needs to be, really looked after and managed. So let's talk about how that looks. The good news is it's relatively simple because of the existing native integration between Salesforce and HubSpot. So today we're talking about people who are managing objections about moving from Salesforce to HubSpot. We have lots of customers who quite happily use Salesforce and HubSpot because Salesforce does what they need it to do. And that integration enables that. It's got incredible sophistication around sync rules and which properties and objects are dominant over one system and the other. And now we can actually sync custom objects between what you've got in Salesforce and what you've got in HubSpot. Why do I talk about that? Because essentially, by plugging the two systems together, we can migrate a lot of the data over. So that move is quite straightforward. There's when we're approaching this, there's really two ways to do it. There's what I'm talking about here is a native sync. So using the native sync. So we're going to sync data, we're going to sync timeline, and that stuff's just going to happen. Okay, because it's already working between two systems. And then it's a question of turning off Salesforce. There are some other bits that can't be synced like that through the native integration. So we might need to build out workflows. We might need to replicate the reports and landing pages and sales email templates and stuff like that. But there's a load of heavy lifting that's been done through that integration. It's also true that sometimes we work with customers who basically want to do a clean install. I think there's a big proportion of Salesforce users who bought Salesforce because, it's a safe pair of hands, but actually they're not using the full features of it anyway. So in that case, we'll do a clean install. We'll import the data via CSV or API. We'll rebuild the custom objects, and we'll do a lot of that stuff manually. And actually they like that because then there's a bit of a fresh start, a bit of a clean start. So there's two options there. We can make the migration really smooth. There's two types of projects around this for us. There's the standard timeline, and there's the phase timeline. The standard timeline is what we do for 80% of customers, and that's pretty straightforward. We'll do some scoping. We will build out HubSpot ready with all the properties and all the bits and pieces and the objects that they need that they had in Salesforce. We'll then do a program of data and asset migration. We'll obviously go through a lot of QA there. There'll be the training that we provide as well around the clients, so they understand now, particularly the users, the salespeople, how they're going to make that switch. That's really important. We'll talk about that later. And then there's the go live, and then there's the post live support. Those are the phases. That's it. Relatively straightforward. People that are much bit, if you've got people who have more complex needs, the size of the implementation's bigger, they have a lot of users, we might take a different approach where we have a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product, we can be looking to get that live within 12 weeks. It gives people the tools to start carrying on doing their sales job, and then we start to phase out implementation of other more complex aspects of it. Perhaps there's other integrations that need to be done into that they had into Salesforce, into HubSpot, and they'll be done in different phases depending on what the client wants to do. So, worst case scenario in those very complicated cases, which is about 20%, you're talking about 3 to 6 months before everything is fully switched over, and then we run into ongoing support. So two different approaches. Let's talk about cost, and you'll see here we're talking about cost of ownership rather than just license cost, because license cost, whatever the salesperson is telling you, is only a small part of what it costs to run a sophisticated CRM. So we've got the license costs, we've got the total costs of ownership, and that's made up of the license list price, and we'll talk about that. Is that to be trusted? What it costs and what's involved in onboarding, some of that I've touched on. And then what's the ongoing admin support requirement? Right, these prices here are from HubSpot. They assume that this is an enterprise play, so it's Salesforce Cloud Enterprise and Salesforce and HubSpot Sales Enterprise, and it's 50 users, so that's quite a big install. Obviously, these list prices will be scaled down depending on how many users you've got, but it just gives us an idea. The crucial thing to say here is that you've got the list price, great, okay, fantastic. Then we might want to start adding on additional users, okay? So, and these aren't people that are salespeople. These are people that might be in finance team, that might be in sales ops, rev ops, who want to access the system. Salesforce will charge you for those users. HubSpot will not charge you for those users. HubSpot will only charge you for paid sales seats. HubSpot has calling included. Salesforce has a thing called Salesforce Engage. Don't really know what that is. That's extra, $40 a user. It also has a thing called high velocity sales, which I think is to do with conversation analytics. And between all that, you're looking at £40 a user, dollars, $50 a user, $75 a user for those extra features. But those features are included in HubSpot. And then the thing that I can't really get my head around is the fact that you have to pay for support with Salesforce, okay? And sometimes, and obviously every deal is negotiated differently, sometimes that can be up to 30% of your license cost. Whereas HubSpot, that's included, and so it should be. And I would say that, certainly our customers absolutely love HubSpot support. They're available 24/7 around the world. They're available, they'll bring you back in 5 minutes. The people that deal with you are experts and know what they're talking about and can diagnose and solve problems really quickly. So if you added all that up, again, we're talking about 50 users, okay? So scale this up and down depending on, that's a massive difference between license costs when you actually look at it. However, Salesforce know this, and we've had situations where we've been talking to our clients who've been talking to Salesforce and talking to HubSpot, and all of a sudden there's a massive discount suddenly appears from Salesforce. We've seen discounts, I heard about discounts of 90% off the list price. That's fine. I suppose the question is, why were they charging so much in the first place? And is it, is it a like for like? Are we actually comparing two things? To discount it by 90%, what are they taking away in order to make that price work? Those are questions that we should all be asking ourselves. And most Salesforce people, customers, need a dedicated Salesforce admin. Okay, we have lots of clients that have some fantastic Salesforce admins. Thing is, right, and I pulled this out from the Chief Information Officer magazine, okay, and it's this independent magazine for the IT world. And I looked at a job description for a Salesforce admin, and it's things like help your users define or fine-tune reports. Well, the users can do that themselves in HubSpot. Run and store weekly snapshot data export of the system data. Like, why would you need to do that in HubSpot? Examine time-based workflows and scheduled Apex queues. Oh my God, what is that? And so on. And I thought this was really interesting, this job description, because it kind of sums up the level of complexity that is needed to run Salesforce day to day. I'm not saying that if you're a sophisticated HubSpot user, you don't need admin support, you don't need RevOps support, but the whole chunk of it, the whole point of HubSpot is that so much of that can be done yourself and can be done within the team. So beware of the Salesforce admin. Let's talk about the onboarding. If we just look at, again, straight HubSpot costs. So this is guided onboarding by HubSpot or a partner like ourselves, because Boom is actually onboarding accredited and does a lot of onboarding on behalf of HubSpot. If we were just doing a straight guided onboarding for enterprise, that's $3,000. For the quick start version, they call it, for Salesforce, that's $5,000. There's already a disparity there. The chances are, though, that when you're doing a migration like that, if you've got a lot of data, you really want to make sure that you're using a partner to manage that whole process for you, who's been through it many, many times, and can avoid all the pitfalls. So if I just compare the two now, from HubSpot managed onboarding and with a partner and a Salesforce partner, I've got the source down here in terms of where that information comes from, Salesforce implementation costs. Obviously, how long's a piece of string? The prices that they quote there, and it's interesting how they break all these things out. Okay, so migration 6 to 10 grand, customization 5 to 60 grand. That's quite a big number. Custom integrations, again, like us, we'd need to understand what the integration was, how complex it was, but we price that up. Training from $10,000. And ongoing support is quoted at $10,000 to $45,000 a year from a partner, not an internal Salesforce admin. If you look at our costs or other partners' costs, so standard onboarding, you're looking at 6 to 10. If it was more of a that phased approach, so there's more complexity, we might be looking at 10 to 25. And we have clients where we provide admin support, so helping them with the back end of the system and sort of standard admin and functions, 1,500 quid a month upwards. Doesn't need to be expensive. And often a lot of that support is actually sort of mentoring and training and showing the people internally how to do things, rather than them having to rely on us just to do basic things. That doesn't work like that. So you can see there, again, straight away, there's a massive potential difference in what it costs to bring you on to Salesforce versus HubSpot, and the differences between the two. Adoption. Well, what can I say? I mean, the feedback we get from customers is that HubSpot is both powerful for admins and easy for the reps to use. Okay. In a way, Dynamics and Salesforce, they almost make a play of the fact that they have this complexity and they have all this functionality, and that you need admins and you need people, and that's a good thing. I think what HubSpot is now moving towards is that, but also on a day-to-day level, it's just nice to use. The user interface is intuitive, and from an admin point of view, a lot of the stuff can be done yourself. And there's just so much support available with that adoption process. I mean, certainly when we are working with customers who are moving from Salesforce to HubSpot, there needs to be some education around, you call it tomato, we call it tomato, what they had in Salesforce might not look exactly the same in HubSpot, but it's the same thing. I remember we had a classic case where we had a CEO who was really objecting to moving from Salesforce to HubSpot because he was used to having this kind of speedometer dial where he could see where they were in terms of close won revenue versus their goal. We couldn't create the speedometer, but we had all that data there. And as soon as we showed him that, he was happy, he was cool. And that objection was taken away. So there is some work to be done on that. But obviously, as we all know, we've got 24/7 HubSpot support. We've got the Academy, which is really powerful for people upskilling themselves. And then there's just the peer-to-peer HubSpot community, which HubSpot have invested so much in and is absolutely fantastic in terms of people being able to go and access questions, answers, and so forth, and getting information. We're coming to the end of this now. If there's any questions, please get in contact with me afterwards, or put them in the queue here. So I'm just going to sum up really. I love this. This is from Forbes Business Advisor in September 2022. Really, really recent. Salesforce offers an extensive feature suite that makes it a top CRM. However, due to its complex infrastructure and relatively high price tag, Salesforce isn't for everyone. Nothing else to say there, really, is there? And I think I'm talking about the objection handling. I think sometimes there are cases when it's not a good idea to leave Salesforce. Don't go from Salesforce to HubSpot. And I call these to really examine that. You need to sort of ask yourself these four things, these four tests. If they're all true, I would say stay with Salesforce. So does the senior management get all the insight they need to make decisions? I hope so. Are the users happy with it? We've seen a lot of cases where senior manager have just the basic revenue forecast information, but the users are just not happy with it. And particularly people that have used other CRMs, not even HubSpot, but other more, intuitive tools, they're not happy with it. The third one is that we've been using Salesforce quite a long time. We've invested heavily on the custom integrations with Salesforce and other systems, and we've invested, and it's like a sunk cost around that. If we were to now move to another system, we're going to have to rebuild those very complex integrations. I haven't really spoken much about integrations. With HubSpot, it's got a fantastic API directory where we can build all sorts of things in and out of HubSpot. So the chances are that if the other third-party system has a open API, public API, we'll be able to connect it. But there might just be so much work that's been done on it previously that you just doesn't make any sense to leave that. And the fourth one would be you've invested so heavily in deep customization of the data structure that the business relies on, is used for so many years that it's just not worth leaving. I think if all four of those things are true, then probably stay with Salesforce. But if any of them aren't true, so you heavily customized it, but people aren't happy with it and people aren't using it, I think it's time to look elsewhere. If you've got people, users are happy with it, there's all sorts of fantastic customization integrations, but the management just cannot get to the numbers that they need, it's time to think about the switch. And really, if I was to sum up HubSpot, this is HubSpot's own positioning. I believe in this. I think this is true. I think that what HubSpot has built is a crafted system. So what Salesforce and others have done is they have acquired different companies over the years and they've stitched them all together, then bashed them all together. They're not truly integrated. They're not truly seamless in the way that HubSpot, Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, Service Hub is. In fact, sometimes we have customers who we introduce into HubSpot and they're like, okay, great. Well, where's the CRM? Oh, well, it's here. All right, great. Okay, well, where's the marketing bit? Oh, it's also here. It's all in one place. That's the point. It's all joined up. So powerful, but not overpowering. And I think HubSpot are doing a great job on that. Obviously, we've got to be careful because as we add more features in, we don't want it to become overpowering. But I think HubSpot are really treading an amazing line on that. So I think key takeaways really, I'd say that for most organizations, HubSpot meets the capability of Salesforce. It wins on usability, pricing, and total cost of ownership and the support. It's cheaper to own and maintain in many cases. It's easier to use. It's easier to set up. It's easier to connect to other systems. So in the future, if you want to think about being future-proof and plugging into other systems, it's there for you. And Sales Enterprise, in particular, matches, most conceivable customization reporting needs. And if anybody on this call wants us to do a demo of that, wants us to show us that, if you want to talk to customers who've made the switch, we'll be more than happy to help with that. So that's the end of the webinar. Amir has asked, please can you share the slides? Absolutely, everybody will get a copy of this recording, and we'll also share the slides. As I said, myself and the team at BBD Boom will be more than happy to take any questions from anybody after this webinar and help you consider, is it right for you to move from Salesforce to HubSpot? So thank you very much for joining me, and good luck in your decision making. Cheers.